ॐ श्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यं निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यस्साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यभिमः योगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् ॐ Verse 91 उपमृद्नाति चित्तं चेत् ध्यातासौ न तु तत्त्ववित् न बुद्धिर्मर्दयन् दृष्टः घटतत्त्वस्य वेदिता 92 सकृत्प्रत्ययमात्रेण घटश्चेद्भासते सदा सप्रकाशोऽयमात्मा किं घटवच्च न भासते. So Vidyaranya deals with the topic of difference between Nirguna Brahma Upasana and this Jnanam. Both have this Aham Brahmasmi Vritti. In case of a one person, it is a Jnana Vritti. In case of other person, it is a Karma Vritti, Manasa Karma Vritti, Jnana Abhasa Vritti. And because of this, well, we have to note certain corollaries which we can derive. First thing is we should know this Aham Brahmasmi Jnana Vritti. When we discuss this, what is this Aham Brahmasmi Jnana Vritti? Sometimes they call it Akhandakara Vritti, etc. You know what happens is, this is a Jnana Vritti, means a knowledge, cognition. And so when we say, suppose that this is a pot, so then there is a pot knowledge, Gata Jnana Vritti. Then there is a book knowledge, right? Pustaka Jnana Vritti, etc., etc. Flower knowledge. So in every piece of knowledge, in every cognition, an unknown object becomes a known object. The pot which was not known, now there is a pot Jnana Vritti, Gata Jnana Vritti, pot cognition. Well, that's how the pot becomes known. So then pot cognition, flower cognition, and book cognition, etc. The factor that distinguishes the knowledge of one object from the other object, knowledge is different, right? Here in this, the factor that distinguishes one knowledge from the other knowledge is the very object itself. Since the pot is different from the book is different from flower, well, therefore, the object itself distinguishes the knowledge of the object. So, same way, well, and anything which is unknown becomes known through this cognition, Jnana Vritti, etc. Now, Brahman is unknown. Therefore, well, unknown Brahman has to be known through this prakriya, through this Jnana prakriya, right? Well, in that case, then Brahman also has to become an object. Like unknown pot becomes an object of your cognition, and you know. Same way you say you don't know Brahman, therefore Brahman also has to become an object of your thought, cognition. Unknown Brahman should become a object of your cognition, and that's how you will come to know Brahman. We feel so. So, if Brahman knowledge also has to be taken place at a given time. Right now I am having a pot knowledge, then at a given time flower knowledge, then at a given time flower cognition, and thereby afterwards there will be a pustak jnanam. So at a given time you have a specific knowledge. Same way Brahman knowledge, specific knowledge. So at a given time, Brahman knowledge takes place. That's how then the Brahman becomes known, etc. So, then there should be, Brahman should be also an object. At a given time, if Brahman knowledge takes place, therefore, like pot knowledge takes place at a given time, because pot is an object. Flower knowledge takes place at a given time, there flower is object. Brahman knowledge also should take place, therefore Brahman also should be object. So, and that Brahman, which is an object, should be distinct from other objects. Just as flower is different than the pot, then book, and therefore the knowledge also is different. We have discussed it. Means the very object distinguishes the knowledge of an object. Same way now Brahman knowledge has to take place. So then Brahman should be distinct from all other objects. When pot knowledge takes place, then there is the flower knowledge goes away. Flower knowledge takes place, book knowledge which was there goes away. Specific object. So now Brahman knowledge should take place. Brahman also is an object. Then that Brahman should be distinct from all other objects. That's not the case. That's not the case. And Brahman is that which actually does not, which is not objectified by the mind. In fact, by which the mind is objectified. Mind is known. All other objects, mind objectifies, thought objectifies, that's how you know. Whereas here, Brahman is not objectified by the mind, means Brahman is not a given object like pot, etc., which mind will objectify at a certain time, and then Brahman knowledge takes place. No. In fact, the very mind itself, the whole mind or every thought is objectified. Brahman is not an object of the thought. The very thought is objectified by Brahman. Please understand this. And therefore, this is entirely a different kind of a thing. And therefore then, in that case now, if Brahman will not be objectified by the mind, then Brahman will never be known. If mind does not objectify a part, then the part will remain unknown. Now, if you say mind does not objectify Brahman, then Brahman will remain unknown. That's how it is. We have to say, you do not require this process called Jnana Kriya, objectifying, etc., which is required in the case of a pot, flower, etc. That Jnana Kriya, the very generation of the thought and illumination by Chidabhasa, and that is how pot is illumined, unknown part become known. That Jnana Kriya itself is not required for Brahman. Why it is not required? Means that subject-object relationship is not required. The knower and that known object, subject-object relationship itself is not required. Objectification by mind means ultimately subject-object relationship is not required. In every form of knowledge, whether it is a pot knowledge, it's a flower knowledge, or it's any other knowledge, or a book knowledge, Brahman is very much present in the form of knowledge. So in a pot knowledge, the knowledge is that Brahman. In book knowledge, that knowledge is Brahman. In flower knowledge, that knowledge is Brahman. Therefore, Brahman is present in the form of a knowledge in every cognition. Brahman does not require a specific cognition to be objectified. Life is a series of cognitions throughout. Series of cognitions. Waking state, all waking state cognitions, varieties of cognitions from morning to night, various cognitions in your mind. That is the activity of the mind. That's the activity of mind. And dream state, different cognitions. Varieties of cognitions, Brahman is very much present in all cognitions, in all knowledge, specific knowledges, all qualified knowledges. Part knowledge is a qualified knowledge, qualified by the part. So all this knowledges, that unqualified knowledge is Brahman. Very content in every piece of knowledge. Well, that unqualified knowledge, which is the very content of that piece of knowledge, which is the very basis of this specific knowledge, qualified knowledge, is consciousness, knowledge. and therefore, and so far as that is concerned, now then that Swamiji, that consciousness or the knowledge, unqualified knowledge, is present in part knowledge and in a flower knowledge. In between it is not present. Therefore the consciousness is basically having a khanda, division. Division in terms of space, associated with the part knowledge, of course, associated with the form knowledge. Part knowledge means part consciousness, you know very well now. And therefore, consciousness associated with the part, consciousness associated with the flower, consciousness associated with the book. So basically the consciousness has a division in terms of space, in terms of time. At this time there is a part consciousness, okay, at a particular time. Now then book consciousness, book knowledge, and therefore at a given time, next moment. So consciousness is associated with a particular name and form, and thereby it is associated with a space, time, and certain attributes, etc. No, not at all. Consciousness has no division between, there is no division in terms of a space, time, etc., or even in nature wise. Consciousness associated with the part is different from consciousness associated with the book, is different from consciousness associated with the flower. No division in terms of space, time, or nature. So space wise, time wise, nature wise, there is no division at all, because it's like a space which is not divided by the various objects in space. Space remaining the same, objects come and go. Exactly like that, consciousness is present in the mind, while in which objects come and go. All the names and forms come and go. And therefore, consciousness always is. Between two cognitions also there is a consciousness which reveals the absence of cognition, absence of a name and form. To recognize that, only people do Omkar Upasana. Between two Omkaras also, what is present is consciousness. Yeah, Om, when you say, well, of course, the Omkara, Akara, Ukara, Makara is born of that. What is in between also, there is a consciousness. Otherwise, how will you know that the one cognition is over and now there is a space, and then next cognition arises? In between there is a space. Who knows it? One thought is over, second thought is over, one piece of knowledge is over, second piece of knowledge is arriving, etc. So in between also there is a consciousness. In consciousness, exactly like space, the objects exist in space, they appear in space and go in the space. Same way, in consciousness, the varieties of the thoughts, names and forms, arise and go. There is no division in consciousness. And therefore, and therefore consciousness always is. It does not come into existence in time. The very concept of the time and varieties of the thoughts they appear in time and in consciousness. So basically, when will I come to know consciousness, that question has no validity. Consciousness does not go away at any time. And this consciousness is the basis and the content of in all cognitions, either in a waking state or a dream state. And therefore, one has to know this consciousness as the very basis of all cognitions, all thoughts, or the mind in general. But mind in general, it's not fair. In every thought, what is present, in every piece of knowledge, in every cognition, what is present is this consciousness, which never goes, never comes. It always is. In that consciousness, everything arises and falls, including I notion. The very knower, I notion, the Ahankara also arises in that, and idam, this notion, this cognition also arises, this cognition, and I cognition. Let's keep that way. The very I cognition, the knower cognition, and the known cognition, this cognition arises in this consciousness. Therefore, when will I come to know consciousness is not a valid question. Consciousness always is, and one has to know the consciousness in this manner. There is no other way of knowing consciousness, Brahman, other than this. If you come across, please let me know. There is no way, because consciousness is manifest in the mind and one has to know there as an invariable factor present in all cognitions, and when the cognition subsides, still it is present to reveal the absence of thoughts, cognitions. Yeah, that's a deep sleep state because I didn't mention it. So consciousness is present when cognitions are there. Otherwise, thoughts become conscious, in fact, cognitions because of this only, consciousness alone. And in that, thought arises. This is the way one has to meditate. There is no other way of knowing Brahman. That's how everywhere it has been said, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma Yo Veda, Yaha Veda, Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyomanda. It is very much present in the mind. One has to know the consciousness where it has manifest. That's how it is. So one has to know Manasa eva anudrashtavyam. So yan manasana manute, correct. It's not an object of any given thought, object of cognition. No, it is not. And otherwise Brahman will remain unknown. Yes, we do accept that there was a time when this one didn't know Brahman. Yes. But so Brahman, even though it is the truth of the knower and known, yes, you take yourself to be knower and something is known away from you. That's how you have an ignorance of the Brahman. But really speaking, Brahman is the very basis of the I cognition, knower, and Brahman is the very basis of this cognition, known. One has to know it as the very truth of I or this cognition, which is really not associated with I cognition or this cognition. It's a basis of that. It's a very content of both the types of cognitions. It always is. It never goes with the I cognition goes away. Suppose I cognition go away, well, the Brahman, the knowledge, the consciousness also go away. No. Consciousness is very much present. To say that there is no even I cognition state is deep sleep state. And when I cognition arises, waking state, well, then there is something this cognition also. Both the cognitions has a basis in this. And therefore, this consciousness which never goes, never returns, has no division in terms of time, space, or nature-wise, well, this consciousness is whole, subject, object. Whole means subject, object. Therefore, this is called I am Brahman. I am that limitless Brahman which is the basis of knower and known. Truth of knower and known. The content of knower and known. This is called Akhandakara Vritti. This is Akhandakara. There is no other Akhandakara Vritti. This is the thing. You know it as a Akhanda, the whole, in terms of subject cognition, I cognition, or this cognition. So, Brahman, well, even though it is a truth of knower and known, we accept that there is ignorance of such a Brahman, which is the truth of both. But unlike an object, well, it is not away from you to fall within the scope of your perception, inference, etc. No. Ignorance, of course, yes. But the remoteness of Brahman, with the possibility of becoming an object for you to know, is not there. Could you follow what I am saying? So, we have ignorance. But just because ignorance is there, therefore Brahman is remote. Like pot, I have ignorance of the pot because pot is not in the vicinity. No. So even though we are ignorant of Brahman, but the remoteness of Brahman with the possibility, well, of course, of becoming an object in future or at any time, for you to know, that possibility is not there. It is in the form of an I, which is the basis of all the cognitions, which is the content of all the cognitions. This is called Aham Brahmasmi Jnanavritti. This is called Aham Brahmasmi Jnanavritti. Kindly keep this thing in mind. We never discuss again and again, but I thought that we should have this all the time. We discuss Aham Brahmasmi Jnanavritti means this is called Akhandakara Vritti also. Akhanda, there is no division, real division between. If there is a ignorance of Brahman, yes, there is a division. I am a knower. There is something known, different from me. That division is there. But really speaking, once you know Brahman like this, then you are in the form of a knower and known both. Really speaking, knower and known are non-separate from you, and really you are not a knower. You are neither a knower nor a known. This is called Akhanda. So this is, well, with regard to this Upasana Vritti and this Jnana Vritti. See, Jnana Vritti has to take place, it removes this Ajnana Avaranam. And once that Jnana Vritti removes this Ajnana Avaranam, well, thereafter, Jnanam need not be protected by maintaining the Vritti. Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi need not be done. So and then the mind, of course, is available for objectifying other things. Means for any Vyavara, mind is available. Entertaining any other Vritti, well, Jnanam generated is not threatened. Aham Brahmasmi, that knowledge which is generated, is not threatened. Because Jnanam is based on fact. Means fact is not preserved. Same way the knowledge of the fact also is not preserved. So, and we have seen ample examples that any knowledge, well, is not preserved. Once it is generated, afterwards your mind thinks of something else, objectifies something else. But that knowledge which is already generated, which means, like I said, the part is known through that cognition. A vritti is generated and part is known now, it remains known. Now you have a flower knowledge. It doesn't mean the part knowledge has gone. In your conscious mind, there may not be a part thought now because there is a flower thought, flower cognition. It doesn't mean now part cognition has gone, part knowledge has gone totally. Now then again there is ignorance of the part. No. The unknown part, well pervaded by the vritti, we know vritti vyapti, and illumined by chidavasa, which is there in the vritti. Now the ajnana avaranam from the part has gone. Part is known to you now, and it remains known. Your mind may have now another cognitions, and it will be like that. It's a series of cognition in a waking state, series of cognitions. But whatever you have cognized, and the object of cognition is once it is known, it remains known. The status has changed from unknown to known. And we know very many things. Our family people also, we don't remember all the time. Oh, she is my daughter and she is my this, he is my son and he is my husband. Once it is known, it's a fact and it is known, well, that's it. Now you do so many other things and in your mind that particular thing, husband, etc. is not there. It doesn't mean now they have become unknown. You know. So, we are able to automatically recollect all these things. In fact, pushing out is a problem. Not bringing in is a problem. That is the issue. Sometimes we wish that we should meditate on Sagunam Brahma, and then, but these people, they never go out. So that's how there is a, Puja Swamiji always talks about unloading them. They are already loaded. They remain all the time. And we have to push them out, it's a big issue. Anyway, so Jnanam goes away and Ajnanam comes back. That would not be the case. So Ajnanam is always Anadi, of course, but it ends. Santa. Jnanam has a Adi. Yeah. Through the cognition. Jnanam arises, has a Adi in the big, but it is Anadi. So Jnanam is Anadi and which ends. Jnanam has a Adi but remains Anantam, remains all throughout. And Brahman is Anadi and Anantam. That's how it is. Ajnanam is Anadi and Santam. Jnanam has a Adi and Anantam. Swamiji, but it is not true. It's not Anantam. It's only up to this life. I'm telling you, it's not true. It's not true. It's because the knowledge occurs not in physical body. Knowledge occurs in subtle body. And we all know subtle body survives the death of the physical body. Therefore, it is very much present. But maybe once you acquire a new body, it may not come to surface so easily. Yet I am telling you, if you have a knowledge of a given thing very clear, you will find that there is some familiarity with the thing. Even in a next life, you pick up certain things very faster, thinking that because this thing looks very familiar to you. But you may not be able to say that, oh, yeah, this is familiar, because I have gained it in past life. I studied that with Muktatma, that Sanskrit grammar, etc. So definitely I am able to recollect everything. That you will not be able to say. But this is so this is a common sense. If subtle body doesn't die, well, survives the death of physical body, then the knowledge which is there in the form of all impressions, it cannot go away. So that's how I say Anantam. Anantam. And that's how even certain time a dream arises in the next life, well, which you have, like a dream arises in this life, and we see certain objects. Of course, mind is a upadana karanam, our vasanas are upadana karanam, we know, right? Then all these things only come to the surface in a dream world, and we feel that those people we have never seen in my life. Could be imagination also, but at the same time could be possible that those things you might have experienced in a past life. You cannot verify that way, but there is a possibility. Yeah. And so, Jnanam is always Adi and Anantam. Ajnanam is Anadi and Santam. And Brahman is Anadi, Anantam. That's how it is. Swamiji, but what about Maya? Same. When I say Ajnanam, you can take it for a Maya also. Maya is Anadi, Sant. Yeah, at least for the Jnani. For the Jnani. He says, I am Brahman and these are all my forms. Then where he is seeing a Maya? Over. Neither Maya's, both Avarana also has gone for him and so-called Vikshepa also is Mithya for him. So as a Mithya continues. We are not saying that Mithya means becomes in zero. I already talked to you. It is not non-existent. It continues. Experientially it is there. But really speaking, he sees everywhere Brahmana only. And therefore, either you say Ajnanam, either in general sense, or you say Maya, it is Anadi and Santam. And Jnanam is Adi and Ananta. Brahman is Anadi Anantam. So Jnanavritti need not be preserved by Jnani. And his mind is available for any other Vyavara. Of course, whereas Upasana, Upasaka, let's say, has a Karma Vritti. It's a Manas Karma. And it should be preserved. He has to maintain that Vritti. What is the Vritti? We know. Aham Brahmasmi, Aham Brahmasmi. That is to be maintained by him. It's a Karma Vritti. It's not a Jnana Vritti. Otherwise, it need not be preserved. So Upasaka, well, of course, gets a benefit also for maintaining this Vritti, etc. We know all this, we have discussed. Being a Karma Vritti, definitely generates a Punyam, etc. And therefore, it will help him to remove the obstacles. And he will also say one day, Aham Brahmasmi, he also will have a Jnana Vritti. And then he need not preserve and maintain, etc. And to maintain this, of course, for Upasana, for Upasaka, this Vritti he has to be maintained. And then definitely he has to reduce Vyavara. Because if you do Vyavara, the mind will be involved. Then a corresponding Vrittis also will arise in the mind. So then the Aham Brahmasmi Vritti will be pushed aside. Therefore, he has to reduce Vyavara. So Upasana and Vyavara, well, they are mutually exclusive. That's how in our all meditations also, we do meditations at the exclusion of all our transactions. We sit at one place, close even the eyes, even close doors, etc. So we create an environment even outside also, so that we will not have a corresponding vrittis in our mind, other than the vrittis we watch, which we want to entertain, maintain. So for Jnani, of course, this Aham Brahmasmi vritti, say I am Brahman, he knows, I am the consciousness which is basis of knower and known. Both knower and known are Mithya, and therefore any Vyavara is a Mithya. Vyavara is knower known, Jnana Vyavara. Or a doer and something which is done, etc. While all this Vyavara, he doesn't bother about it. So, and those Vyavara do not threaten. It's a Mithya. They do not threaten I am that Jnanam Aham Brahmasmi, etc. Anyway. So that is in verse 92 it said, Sakrut Pratyaya Matrena. So what we discussed is also applied in worldly knowledge. We have seen that. Sakrut Pratyaya Matrena Gataha Chet Bhasate. Sakrut means once. Pratyaya Matrena. Like a pot. Pratyaya. Pot Pratyaya. Pot Vritti. Gatakar Vritti. Once Gatakar Vritti takes place, Gataha Bhasate. Naturally. Gata Jnanam arises because consciousness is very much there. Pot thought arises, and definitely pot is illumined immediately, which we call pot knowledge or pot cognition, pot consciousness. So Gata Jnanam rises in him and it will remain. So even though you don't maintain this Gata Vritti, still you have a Gata Jnanam, even though you don't entertain Gata Vritti during, let's say, this class. You have a pot knowledge, right? But you have not to remember here that, this is pot, this is pot, this is pot, this is pot. If I forget that, I will definitely, the pot will become unknown. No. So in a Pancadasi class, etc., you have a corresponding thoughts. But your pot knowledge is not threatened. So Gata Jnanam Vartate. Iti chet, if this is the law, well, for Achetan, but this for inert part, well, you have not to remember all the time. Means different Vyavara will not threaten your knowledge of the pot. Then what to talk about this Saprakasha Atma, who is very much present in a part knowledge and all other knowledge, as, as the very I, as the very Aham, in the form of an I, the consciousness shine, self-illumining, it shines, because of which even part and everything shines in your mind as cognitions. And therefore, well, if such a, inert part need not be illumined all the time by the vritti. Once it is known, it is known. You have not to illumine that part, inert part, constantly by the vrittis. You need not do that, and still the part will remain known to you. Then what to talk about this Atma, which is self-illumining? And therefore, well, you will never miss it. Atma is available all the time, and therefore there is not a moment where Atma is not. So even the time, concept of the time also exists in Atma, the consciousness, etc. Anyway, so Ghatavat na bhasate kim. So Prakasha Atma, Ghatavat na bhasate kim. Will the Atma not be evident to this Jnani? All the time it is evident only. Even so-called non-evident thing becomes evident by cognition, like pot, etc. And then it remains evident to you. Same way, this which is self-evident, then there is a question of, because of which everything becomes evident. That self-evident Atma you are going to lose once you know that I am self-evident consciousness, self-illumining consciousness, self-existent consciousness. Once it is known, well, how will you miss it? You will not, and you have not to remember it also. Therefore, Vyavahara does not oppose, in fact, this knowledge. Vyavahara will, because of Vyavahara, I will forget this. No. Anatma Jnanam also, maybe lost means it buries, It buries under something. It's not totally lost, but it is buried. But Atma is all the time shining in the mind. That's how I talked about that nature of knowledge. Self-knowledge, well, definitely, it is present. Even particular cognition takes place or not, you are very much present. It's like in a deep sleep state. No particular cognitions are there, no particular knowledges are there, yet you shine, right? And same way, and other two states where there are series of cognitions. In every cognition, well, you are very much present. Between two cognitions, you are present. So, you don't arrive and go. Other than you, something arrives and goes. So, I, that is, which is self-evident Atma, this Brahman, consciousness, is all the time there. This Anatma, which is, various objects come and go in the mind in form of thoughts, etc. Anyway, verse 93. Saprakashataya kinte tadbuddhistattvavedanam buddhischakshanaasheti chodyam tulyam gatadishu. So, Purvapaksha raised this question that before, Jnani also has to maintain this Jnanavritti Aham Brahmasmi, etc. For that we will give you some reasons, etc. Means knowledge, he tells some 3 points by which he wants to prove that this Aham Brahmasmi Jnanam, that knowledge has to be in order to maintain this. You have to maintain this Jnanam. Otherwise, you will lose this Jnanam of Aham Brahmasmi. For that, he is going to say few points. So very nice, of course. First thing is, he says, you said knowledge generation requires a thought generation. You said, like part knowledge, to generate part knowledge, part thought should be there. Flower knowledge only takes place when there is a flower thought. So first thing you believe, Vedantin, first thing you accept that basically a knowledge is generated, or knowledge generation requires a thought generation. Then we go further now. Second point. Now, preservation of the knowledge also requires preservation of the thought. Generation of knowledge requires generation of the vritti. Therefore, preservation of knowledge also requires preservation of that thought. One has to preserve it. One has to maintain that. So, so Jnanam generated, Jnana Vritti. Okay, good. But then, well, if in order to remain as a Jnanam, that Anuvritti also, Vritti Avritti or Anuvritti should be there all the time. Because Vritti and Jnanam goes together. Vritti is generated, knowledge generated. Therefore, if you want to maintain knowledge, preserve the knowledge, well, Vritti also should be preserved. Therefore, not just Upasaka has to maintain Aham Brahmasmi Vritti, even Jnanis also have to maintain this Vritti. He says like that. So, first statement, let us understand Purvapaksha. Swaprakashataya te kim prayojanam? Beautiful. He says, well, Atma is Swayam Prakasha. You said self-illumining, self-effulgent. Doesn't require to be illumined by any other pramana, by senses, by mind. Mind doesn't illuminate. Mind doesn't know the Atma. Mind doesn't illumine the Atma, and thereby you know the existence of the Atma. Senses do not illumine the Atma, doesn't objectify the Atma, and therefore you say the Atma is, etc., etc. Because Atma is self-illumining. In fact, before mind starts its function, the I is very much present. Whatever the function mind does, before that I is present. Whatever the function senses do, before that I is present. And therefore, senses have not to objectify, mind has not to objectify the Atma, and therefore Atma is self-illumining. Fine, very good. But because of self-effulgence of Atma, self-illumination of the Atma, it's actually of no use to everyone. This self-illumining Atma is for Jnani or for Ajnani? Ajnani's Atma is not self-illumining. What are you talking? We say. What are you talking? Whether it is Ajnani or Ajnani, Atma is self-illumining. Well, for a samsari also, Atma is self-effulgent. So, if Atma is self-effulgent, in both the cases, whether the person has a Jnana Vritti or person doesn't have a Jnana Vritti, means ignorant, for both Atma is self-effulgent, well, then in that case, this self-effulgence of the Atma has not destroyed the ignorance. Right? Atma is self-effulgent, therefore it has to say itself that I am self-effulgent. You are not to be, there is no pramana required for that in order to remove this ajnanam, because Ajnani's Atma also is self-effulgent, Ajnani's Atma is self-effulgent, and therefore that self-effulgent Atma which is illumining itself, well, remove the Ajnanam of the Ajnani and he should be also Jnani. But that's not the case. This Ajnani samsara, that ignorance, etc., does not go, even though his Atma is self-effulgent. It does not destroy that ignorance, etc. Saprakashataya, because of the self-effulgence of this Atma, te kim prayojanam, tava kim prayojanam. What is the benefit of you? Just because your Atma is self-effulgent. You should be Jnani, but you are not a Jnani. So, we are talking to ignorant. It's not. So, this is first, Akshepa. Tava kim prayojanam, means there is no prayojanam. Just Atma is self-effulgent, and therefore it will serve a purpose, etc. No. It doesn't serve a purpose. It doesn't remove samsara of the Ajnani, because Ajnani's Atma is also self-effulgent. Okay. So what is required then? Self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is required. That can destroy Ajnanam and samsara. So self-knowledge is something different from self-effulgence. Self-effulgence is there in Ajnani's case also, but there is no Jnana Vritti. Ajnanam is there. You require self-knowledge, which will remove Ajnanam and samsara. Not just self-effulgence of Atma remove Ajnana. You need a Jnana Vritti. See, he is going step by step. So, in order to destroy Ajnanam, that thought, Aham Brahmasmi thought, Jnanam, Aham Brahmasmi, thought is required. As the thought arises, Jnanam arises, will destroy Jnanam and samsara. So first, as I said, generation of the knowledge required generation of that vritti. Self-effulgence is of no importance. It doesn't remove samsara or ajnana. Okay, so self-knowledge is something different from self-effulgence, and self-knowledge is not for all. Self-effulgence is common for all. And self-effulgence, and if self-effulgence is basically self-knowledge, then definitely all the gurus will be unemployed. They will not have any job to do but to do like this all the time in a cold. Nothing else to be done. Okay. Means self-knowledge is required. Self-effulgence is, even though it is common, doesn't remove samsara, ajnana. Okay, what is self-knowledge? So it is going, it is a thought generated in the mind from the teaching of Guru Shastra. Guru and Shastra. Guru Shastra means you thought there is some other Shastra. No, Guru and Shastra. So, knowledge definitely is in the form of the thought. And what is that thought here? Aham Brahmasmi. So, the first thing is you need a knowledge in order to have in order to remove ajnanam and samsara. And knowledge is in the form of a thought. First thing. So saprakashadaya tava kim prayojanam. What will be of your use, this saprakashatva, self-effulgence, self-illumining? It's of no use. You need a knowledge. And knowledge is in the form of thought. One. And then Purvapakshi says, second point, tad buddhi means that thought, particular thought, aham brahmasmi, that thought alone is called knowledge, which belongs to what? Mind. And I told you aham brahmasmi, that knowledge. What type of that knowledge I have told you already. So self-effulgence belongs to Atma, but then you definitely need this tad buddhi means that particular thought, aham brahmasmi thought, etc. is required, which is there in your mind, and that is because of which, you know tattva vedanam. Then you will know the tattva, you will know the Brahman. So basically, this is a second thing. Now third. Could you follow what I am saying? Saprakashataya tava kim prayojanam akshepa. There is no purpose will be served by just self-effulgence of the Atma. You need self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is in the form of a thought. That's the second thing. And the third thing is buddhihi kshananashya. And any thought, is subject to momentary disappearance. It's momentary, it's subject to disappearance, fleeting. Do you agree, O Vedantin, with all these three statements, that just because Atma is self-effulgent, it will not remove ignorance? Do you agree? Yes. What will remove ignorance? Self-knowledge. For that, what do you require? A thought. Aham Brahmasmi thought, which occurs in the mind. Okay? Right. And the third thing also, you will accept that buddhi kshananashya. Any thought is basically momentary, subject to disappearance, fleeting. All the three you agree, Vedantin? Yes. So definitely means knowledge is generated by thought, definitely, and that is momentary. Thought is momentary. Therefore, as the thought goes away, the knowledge also will go away. And therefore, you have to, even if you want to preserve the knowledge, aham brahmasmi, you have to preserve the thought. Means, thought, let it be momentary, but you maintain that thought all the time. Amazing. And therefore, even after getting knowledge, you have to, like that upasaka who preserves aham brahmasmi vritti, or let him superimpose. That will let us not bother about it. He doesn't accept that fact. He is not able to appreciate the fact that I am Brahman, etc. No problem. Let him superimpose Brahmatvam upon himself. Ahangara upasana. Let him do. But you gain knowledge and you have to preserve it. Jnanam will be in the form of a thought. thought is momentary. Jnanam becomes momentary. Again you become ignorant. So preserve it. Wow. So like Upasaka repeats the vritti, Jnani also repeats this vritti. And that's how Bhagavan said, Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmara. Mam is Brahman. Bhagavan says, mam anusmara yudhyacha. Do your vyavara, yuddha. Do your vyavara, anusmara. All the time remember me as a Brahman, as yourself. That's how Bhagavan said. You are interpreting something else. You are telling that is a meditation, etc. for karma mukti. Who said you like that? It's not true. Iti means this is a Purvapaksha. Vidyaranya answers to Purvapaksha. So, a preservation of a knowledge, we say, requires preservation of the thought. Are you preserving this part thought in this Panchadashi class in order to preserve, part knowledge, in order to preserve part knowledge, are you preserving part thought at this moment? Please tell me. Before you came here, you came to know a part. You have a part knowledge. It is in the form of a thought, correct. Now you have come to Panchadashi class. And in Panchadashi class, definitely you will have now different thoughts pertaining to these classes. Then you had a fear. Now you will forget this part. The part will be unknown to you because the part thought will go away. And therefore in this Panchadashi class also you are constantly maintaining this thought. Hey, that is part, that is part, that is part, that is part. Are you doing that? If you are doing that, then why should you come to Panchadashi class? For what? Why should you come? Whole Panchadashi class is a blank for you. Because in your mind, what is going on is that is thought, that is part, that is part, that is part. You have to preserve it. Jnanam is in form of a thought, you said. Thought is momentary. Then Jnanam is also momentary. Part Jnanam, part knowledge is also momentary. So you have to maintain it. Are you doing that? If you say, yes, I am doing that, then I will say, then in order to preserve the knowledge of Brahman also you have to maintain that thought. If you say yes to me. So that is what it is. So Chodyam Tulyam. So I will raise similar questions to you. Gatadishu. With respect to part, etc. Once you know the part through the part thought, are you maintaining that part thought all the time in order to keep the part knowledge, or the part knowledge will go away? Please tell me. So Gatadishu means depending upon, with respect to this Gata, etc. It is saying Chodyam Tulyam means what you have raised the doubt is similar. You have raised the doubt regarding Brahman. That Aham Brahmasmi, if I don't maintain that thought, Jnanam basically is generated due to thought generation, and therefore Jnanam goes away because the thought is momentary. So Jnanam also becomes momentary, and therefore in order to preserve the Jnanam, you have to maintain that thought throughout. You said that. I am asking you same question with regards to part. Forget Brahman. Once you know the part in terms of a thought, then are you maintaining that part knowledge by maintaining part thought or not? Please tell us. He has to say no. Right? Anyway. So if part thought should be preserved, I will say Brahma Vritti also, Aham Brahmasmi Vritti also should be preserved. And what he says, you see, 94. Gatadau nischite buddhihi nasyatyeva yada gatah ishto netum tada shakyah iti chet samamatmani. Actually, this is all a technical discussion, but it is very important. So, Upasaka has to struggle to remember, of course, Brahman, etc. Jnani has no struggle to remember this Brahman, because knowledge is something available whenever you want. That's what we are going to say. Gatado nishchite sati. So it's a sati saptami. When pot etc. are being known, nishchite sati, when they are ascertained, means they are known. When pot etc. are being known, pot etc. are ascertained, nishchite, buddhihi nashyati eva. Pot thought will disappear later. Means ignorance of the pot, goes away. Once a thought arises, the ignorance of the pot, goes away. Pot is illumined and therefore pot ignorance goes away. Pot thought also goes away. Both go away. But the knowledge of the pot stays. Pot ignorance goes away as the thought arises, pot thought arises, and illumined by, of course, Chidabhasa, you know very well. So pot ignorance goes away, and thought being momentary, pot thought being momentary, that also go away. But still pot knowledge stays. And therefore, jnanam tishtati, knowledge continues. So yada gataha netum ishtaha, whenever gatagnyani wants to retrieve that knowledge, tada shakya. Need not be now in the form of a pot thought. Now he has a different thought. He has come to the class, so he has a different thoughts now. He is gaining some different knowledge. But that pot knowledge which was there in his mind remains. And whenever, yada gataha netum ishta, whenever he wants to bring the pot in his mind, tada shakya hai. It is possible for him to bring. Means pot knowledge he can recall. And therefore it's not that it happens that now the pot has become unknown. No. So one need not preserve knowledge in form of a thought. So Purvapakshi says, with respect to pot knowledge, this is a thing. Well, then iti chet, if this is your answer, well, then it's same with respect to Atma. Atmani samam. Atmani means Atma Vishay. With regards to Atma also it is same. Once you gain the knowledge, clarity, that I am Brahman, you have not to maintain this thought. Exactly like pot knowledge. You will have a different thoughts pertaining to Vyavahara, but that will never threaten your knowledge, because it's a fact. And knowledge of the fact also, the fact cannot be removed. Knowledge of the fact also cannot be removed. You can recall. If you want, you can recall. And whenever you recall yourself, suppose, whenever you remember yourself, suppose, then you automatically what comes to your mind is, I am Brahman. This is our answer. 95 onwards we'll see. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.